Can you believe it? Taiwan, a subtropical island, has become one of the world's top 10 whiskey markets and a producer of internationally acclaimed whiskeys. From Japanese colonial influence to world-class distilleries, Taiwan's whiskey journey spans nearly a century, defying all odds in a climate seemingly unsuitable for whiskey production. I am Paul Peng Wang, an expert in alcoholic beverages with over 20 years of experience. We'll explore how Taiwan transformed from a whiskey importer to a celebrated producer in this episode of Taiwan on the Rocks. Barley, a main crop in traditional whiskey production countries, is not commonly grown in Taiwan. This subtropical island lacks many conditions that typically favor whiskey production. During the Japanese colonial period, whiskey was first introduced to Taiwan. After the colonizers left in 1945, the government took over the monopolized business, leading to the creation of the first locally bottled whiskey in 1948. This product was named whiskey, but not to today's standards, because it was merely an aromatized colored alcohol based on the stock the Japanese left behind. So this was not a true whiskey, not to say the beginning of Taiwanese whiskey. In 1955, the Monopoly Bureau started importing whiskeys in very limited quantities for privileged buyers, including US Army officers in Taiwan, overseas foreigners or diplomats accompanied by approved documents for purchase. Despite their rarity, these imported whiskeys slowly but surely changed the world's vision of whiskey in Taiwan. In 1958, the Monopoly Bureau started research in whiskey production and was finally inspired to produce a true whiskey. When the previous false product was ended in 1966, there wasn't yet a locally produced whiskey to replace it. The early 1980s was a time when Scotch whiskey was oversupplied. With its low price on the market, there was no interest to produce one's own whiskey. However, the Monopoly Bureau seized the opportunity and imported Scotch whiskey to blend with a tiny bit of its own malt whiskey produced at Nantou Distillery. This product was created in 1984. Despite the overwhelming 80% of the blended component coming from Scotland, it could be reckoned as a milestone that Taiwan has finally produced a true whiskey. The monopolized alcohol business was gradually removed in the late 1980s. In 1991, whiskeys were legally allowed to be imported. Then in 1995, the quantity of whiskey imported surpassed brandies, which had been the mainstream imported spirit. In 2002, with Taiwan joining the WTO, taxes on imported spirits were further lowered and the sale of whiskey was further enhanced. The prosperous domestic whiskey market encouraged local alcohol producers. The angel share during the aging process is particularly high due to the warm climate, which means higher costs for producers. However, in return, whiskey makers gain something invaluable: flavors and qualities that cannot be reproduced elsewhere on the planet. These unique conditions have given rise to two leading whiskey producers in Taiwan. One is Taiwan Tobacco and Liquor Corporation, or TTL, renowned in the whiskey world for its Omar single malt whiskey produced at the Nantou Distillery. Being previously the Monopoly Bureau, TTL accumulated huge resources and experiences in alcohol production. In recent years, it has kept releasing wonderful products beyond expectations. From fruit liqueur and fruit brandy barrel-finished whiskeys, to experimental grain whiskeys and various blends, even to sophisticated and complex barrel maturation experiments, TTL kept surprising whiskey connoisseurs.
就John其实创厂很早，我们在1977年的时候就创厂。那一开始这个厂创立目的其实不是为了做威士忌，而是为了收购南投当地的农民产量过剩的水果。所以我们一开始就是从做水果酒出身的。那后来呢，为了更进步到照顾当地的农民，开始跟2001代进学农民契作 收购他们当年产量的所有的葡萄。那收购量其实非常非常大，大到有一天，即使我们那时候是公卖局时代，我们做出来的葡萄酒我们也卖不完。那葡萄酒在台湾其实很容易变质，所以为了避免它变质，我们就买入所谓的免蓄式的蒸馏器，我们把葡萄酒蒸馏成白兰地。好，所以我们就从水果酒、从葡萄酒做白兰地。那其实早期也有所谓的威士忌产品，可是因为之前我们没有自己的蒸馏工厂，所以我们就是进口苏格兰的威士忌原酒进来。它从民国70几年代到民国90几年代都是这样做的。可是有一天呢，苏格兰很聪明，他发现说，未来苏格兰威士忌会起飞，加上那时候的威士忌原酒涨价涨到非常夸张，所以公司就说，那干脆我们来设立自己的威士忌工厂，所以就选定了南投当做我们自己的威士忌生产区域。那也是因为受到了早期我们做水果酒的一些影响，所以我们厂本身就有很多水果酒的元素，所以后来我们就用这些产品去做所有的洋桶跟过桶，那我们的威士忌会有带有我们早期葡萄酒、水果酒的一些特色，这也是比较具有台湾风土味道的一些产品。对，所以我们后来就陆续推出了荔枝、梅子、葡萄跟酒精白泥桶，这样就是一方面可以让台湾人比较容易产生共鸣，因为毕竟你是生活在这块土地嘛，你对这些味道会比较熟悉。那另一方面是当你把这个产品推到全世界去的时候，才比较自己的所谓的独特性。
我觉得这个荔枝对于喝葡萄酒的人来说也会非常的有吸引力，因为他们会一闻觉得很熟悉、很亲切，因为很像格物致糖
对，是格物致糖
这种新香型的、那种芳香型的葡萄品种，果香啦、花香啦，
对，
然后那种干燥的香料啦，然后又加上木桶本身给它的木质调性、茴香啦、一些豆蔻啊等等的，就整个会觉得，会忽然觉得好像虽然很烈，但是香气会非常熟悉，然后一喝又没有那么的韵烈。On the other hand, Cava Line is a brand that has gained a significant reputation abroad. Established in 2005, Cava Line malt whiskeys were initially best sold in duty-free shops, as the Taiwanese domestic market wasn't quite interested in this locally made whiskey. However, since 2010, with ambition and a clear intention to break the ice, Cava Line has consistently participated in competitions, amassing more than 600 gold medals in just over a decade. Named after the ancient name of Yilan County in the northeast of Taiwan, where whiskey has never been a traditional local drink, Cava Line has managed to turn these foreign whiskies into globally recognized spirits.
其实格马兰它这一个品牌的命名本身就是以宜兰这个地方的古地名，所以叫做 Cava Line， 是因为我们取之于雪山的水源，然后还有很多想要跟当地作为连结。那所以这首先对于大家所熟知的传统威士忌产区就已经是很不一样的点。然后再加上其实我们的风味与传统威士忌方面，它是更热情，然后更奔放，像是台湾有水果王国这个美称。然后所以当你喝的时候，其实就是各种的热带水果香气，像是芒果啊、凤梨，然后甚至是像是其他像香蕉之类的，会在不同的酒款。那其实我们的酒款有很多不同的品项，就像我们总经理非常喜欢古典乐，然后所以它就是一整个交响乐团。那从我们第一支酒叫做 Classic， 这一支 Classic 它也使用了波本、American Bourbon， 然后还有 Oloroso Sherry， 所以它波本跟雪莉像香草啊，然后像是雪莉的那种坚果类，或者是葡萄干那种调性，会在后来的平衡后再被迸发出来那种感觉。所以我觉得经典算是很品牌代表性很好的一个威士忌，但同时它也是非常百搭。然后再来就是 Solace， 就是独奏系列，独奏就代表它自己本身有足够强烈的特色，然后可以一枝独奏，一个人就可以表达出很好的特性。那格马兰是目前市面上拥有最完整雪莉桶的威士忌品牌，所以我们在各种的雪莉桶的不同风味都可以有不同的呈现，然后加上在台湾这个很独特的气候下，它其实就算是一样的桶子，它呈现它熟成出来的风味也会与传统我们所认知的雪莉桶有不一样。虽然我们的桶子跟发芽大麦都是进口，但是其实最重要的是水源，还有整个环境，它对酒整个熟成造成的结果，然后这样子才会让格马兰的风味是最特别的。
但我觉得这个就是很可以呈现台湾的精神，因为我们人克服了环境的限制，然后把可以做到的做到最好。
没错。
Nowadays, no one would doubt that Taiwan would not produce its own wonderful whiskey that competes with those whiskey countries in the world. And Taiwan doesn't just buy whiskey anymore, but successfully produces whiskey itself. I'm here at Maoweiqi Distillery, a small but exquisite one, to explore how the whiskey maker crafts a single malt Taiwanese whiskey that aligns its taste with international palates while incorporates Taiwanese local characteristics.
约莫10年前，我们在饭店这一块呢，有投入了威士忌的这一个零售的一个事业。那我们在世界上各地呢，收集了各种珍稀威士忌也好，或是当时代所发售的一些新款的威士忌。那我们也试着喝了非常多的来自于世界各地的威士忌，所以我们这边呢会觉得说，这个好像缺少了什么。那既然我们在台湾本来已经有几个傲视全球的这个威士忌的大厂，带领着我们台湾走向威士忌这个产业，所以我们有没有机会以我们一个绵薄之力呢，能够创造一个自己属于在地风情的一个威士忌？所以这是一开始想要创立威士忌酒厂的一个想法。那又要带入我们在地文化的一个表现，所以我们有在这个去年开始去使用了台湾的本土大麦，发麦之后的麦芽呢，再蒸馏出这个新酒，那产生出跟这个苏格兰进口的这个原料是确实有一些这个风味上的差异，也许在木桶端没有办法做到本土，因为台湾本身并没有这个产橡木这样的一个植物，所以我们希望说在原料端能够做到100%的台湾制造，麦芽再到酵母，再到乃至于后端的制成，整个是100%台湾制造。
What are the key factors in the whiskey that make the spirits prevail in Taiwan? I'm here to meet up with Hu Yuwei, curator of Whiskey Fair, also a friend of mine. Let's find out the answers with him to better understand Taiwanese palate.
早期啊，我们会认为台湾人有种习惯啦，就是见黑3分补，所以酒色越重，他会觉得越好喝。那相对呢，就是这种雪莉桶型。它就是看起来的颜色啊、丰厚度啊，再就喝起来的那种润口度啊，其实是相对舒服。很多不管是进口啊或本土的酒厂都很会推这样子的酒款，但我觉得市场上有在调，就像我们的味蕾跟餐饮越来越丰富，那跟世界的交流越来越多，就是我觉得可能就从那种台湾的演变历史，它本来就是个大熔炉嘛。所以各个文化很容易在台湾就是被大家接受，所以我觉得就是大家都喜欢不同的东西的时候，它对于酒的宽容度，我觉得相对也就高了。我记得以前威士忌在推广的时候，他们都喜欢做那种很高大上的推广方式，可是我觉得这几年慢慢酒商的推广方式也不一样，就是他们也走的是比较生活化，那就是很信手拈来，他可能就可以喝了。台湾大概是少数，你看嗨三档热炒店，就是会喝威士忌的，大概就在台湾。就是夏天我就加冰块喝，冬天我就纯饮，所以我觉得它是很活泼的使用方式、饮用方法。做很简单的调酒例如说它即使是做气泡水的兑饮也好，或者是加一些牛奶，或者是做一些不同的搭配。或是我们刚刚讲的 Highball 或米兹瓦里，我觉得都是很好的入门。台湾威士忌酒厂可能也因为这个老师很清楚，我们的气候环境 Angel Share 的关系，面临到的问题就是目前都没有那种酒龄很高的酒款大概就是除非他真的就是推出特殊商品，然后他摆明就是跟你讲，这东西也当收藏了，那你就只能买了。对啊，包装精美啊，跟画家联名啊，那我觉得它都是一个很好的一个文化的展现啊，我觉得这是很棒的东西。
Have you tasted the Taiwanese whiskey? Which local brand is your favorite? Share your experiences in the comments below. For more stories about alcoholic beverages in Taiwan, follow us on Taiwan Plus.